assume that everyone can see us too, so that's great. So, hello everyone. So I hope that you have enjoyed the 3 films that we have sent you. So today we're going to spend 20 minutes discussing with Xiaopei her films, and then we'll open up the floor for discussion. To start with, Xiaopei, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello everyone, thank you Hongwei. And I am a filmmaker, and also I started an NGO called Pink Space in Beijing in 2007, and we're doing work on research and advocacy, work with a marginalized group of people in China. And before that, I was a student. I studied gender and development. Then I studied sexuality and cultural change. And then I did another study on cultural studies. So then and before that, I was activist, lesbian activist in China, and also government officials for the central government of China. And before that, I was a mountaineer, professional mountaineer. And before that, I was a shepherd working in rural China. And so that's about me.
How exciting! So I'm really pleased to hear that doing gender sexuality studies can take you to so many interesting jobs. So I'm really jealous. That's great. So let's focus on your films. So you are a filmmaker. What kind of films do you make?
Basically, because based on my experiences and also my studies focusing on gender, the sexuality, and the culture change, and the culture, and my experiences about working and with lesbian groups, and after I finished my study, I started working in China. I founded this NGO working in China, but we work with marginalized communities, mostly women at the beginning. Then we do, we collect the stories and trying to get some stories that are unheard of or oppressed, and then just some unheard or less heard stories, and collect the voices and the life experiences, then make film out of those stories. So yeah, basically, that's very, it's a generalizing, but if you have seen my film, I sent a few, then you know what kind of films, but we're going to discuss some of the films if you have seen or if you have time to see it later. But basically, I think the very, very first film I made is called A Polyamorous Family, because lots of representations about the polyamorous is negative, and even when I worked in an NGO working on sexualities, they had a film festival, and they showed a film, I think 2 films in that film festival about polyamorous, and it's all very negative. So then I thought I'll make something different. So I made a film called Polyamorous Family, based on my own story, my family. And it is shown in France and Germany this year, and they liked it. And originally, I didn't think of making a film to show in the public. I was just like responding to the negativities towards polyamorous family. But I think the more personal stories make sense to general society, and so yeah, that's one kind. And also when I started making films, my editor told me I was such a bad filmmaker, and she said you have to edit it yourself, then you know how bad you are. And so I started making, no, and then I videoed my cat. Then I thought, okay, I edited it myself. So I made a 3 minutes cat porn film. And I made it a love story. And then I thought, because I think a lot of people are saying homosexuality is unnatural. How to say? Not natural. So then I thought, okay, cats, those two male cats are having sex, so it's quite natural to me. And also people are saying religious are against homosexuality. So the subtitles I used are all from a Christian, from Bible. So it's a gay cat action love story, and then Christian Bible, like the lines are from the Bibles. So I made a three minutes video. Then I didn't think of anything else, and then my friend saw the film and then put it online, and I checked that now it has 220,000 viewers online on YouTube. So if you type gay cats and my name, then you can see the 3 minutes film. Hongwei, did you put that film for?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Right, okay. So yeah, that's the kind of a film I make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those two examples are great because they touch on different aspects of sexuality, human sexuality and animal sexuality, as well as the different types of families and relations. It seems that family is an important aspect of your film. For example, in another film that you have shared with us, So I Love You Too, it is about people who left their family and moved to care homes. Would you like to talk more about that film and what's the context of that film?
I think it was in 2009. I went to a conference in the UK. It's about sexuality and the development. And there was a lecturer giving a speech, and she talked about disability and the sexuality. And I actually, I worked with a marginalized group, but I hadn't at the time working with the people with a disability. Then I thought this is the area I'd like to develop, to spread my work on these issues. So I asked her if she can recommend me a book on disability and sexuality. And she's a lecturer from UK University, and she told me there is none. Then I thought, okay, so I should develop this area. I should, work on these issues. So I asked a friend. He's a gay activist, artist, and with a disability. So he and I worked for 4 weeks, designed this workshop on exploring disability and sexuality, and we had absolutely no references, but only the definition, working definition by WHO on what is a sexuality. So we designed this workshop, and then we implemented in Beijing, in China, and in this care home with people with not a mental disability, but with learning difficulties. So their IQ, so-called IQ, is low, and then some level, below some level, and so their families sent them to this care home. So we had this art workshop, and it was brilliant because my friend, Jose, and he's an artist, and he learned and also implemented many workshops on disability issues, but sexuality and disability was new to him as well. So we were very happy to explore the issues on disability and sexuality. Then when we implemented the workshop, then I documented it and I filmed. I took pictures. Then I think in many years later, I thought, oh, this is still relevant for other people if they want to work on this issue. So I made a documentary. I think several years after. So just to help other people if they want to, work on these issues. Because when Jose and I worked on this project, we had no references to, to base on. So it is quite important to have this documentary films.
Yeah. So that's great. I really love the art project and I love the workshop and I love the films. It's a very happy film. So everybody is enjoying playing games, drawing or having food, etc. And everybody is very happy. It does seem that it combats some of the discrimination against the people living with mental disability or learning difficulties. So let's move on to your next film, which is Yvonne and Chrissy, which is a very different context. The story, it's not real. It's a real story. It's based on two people's real life living in south of England. How did that story come about?
Those two people that I met them and became friends. Yvonne was a swimmer, and I am a swimmer too. So I met her in the club, swimming club, and then I learned she was a performance artist as well, and she actually in the UK, in this little town called Breton, they have festivals every year, and she performed every year, but she stopped somehow. And one of her performances was called Sexuality and something, and she won the first, together with other people, and I really liked it. And also I heard she gave up her inheritance, like £500,000 when she was 18, and nobody believed that story. And I thought she's a very interesting person. But when I was in the UK, I was a student. I wasn't a filmmaker. And then after I came back to China and I became a filmmaker, and I thought I want to make a story of hers. And Chrissy was my university mate. She was transgender. She is transgender person, and she had a theory about it's new, it's different from other transgender theories, and she wrote her thesis based on her transgender experiences, and also she's a traveler, and she's a filmmaker, and she's a traveler. And she has very interesting story to tell, and so I made one trip. I can't remember which year, and so I filmed both of them. But when I came back to China, I originally I wanted to make different stories, but it's all about sexuality because Evo has very interesting performances on sexuality and very funny stories. She's a talk show, talk show performance artist, and she has this many funny stories about her own sexual lives, and so then the filmmakers in China suggested I make one film and make those two together. So I did. I tried so hard and to make those two stories together, but then I had to make a theme that is like just make these two are related to each other. So and then it's about the capitalism. I think it's in China and globally.
Look, this is this morning.
About you know, the capitalist.
The platform is actually really
money,
beautiful. They've got all those frames.
How people think about money, and I think these two people have really different ideas about
Her camera's
the
obviously
capitalist
down
money and use
below
their
'cause
life
she's
stories
looking
to
down.
Yes, yeah.
how to say
Oh,
anti-capitalism.
she's probably
that's,
using a laptop. This is
how
very
it
common
is
for a
Yeah,
laptop.
yeah, exactly.
the background.
Yeah, this is great.
Oh,
This
God,
film
we did look
challenges
thinner,
our
don't we?
understandings of so many different things. For example, That's a great thing.
Mm.
Gender, sexuality.
Yeah.
People, a lot of people think transgender. If you are trans, then you have to be dressed like the other gender, and so on. So that's not what Chrissy does. And then there's also questions about the sexuality, women's sexuality and women's moralities. Yes, how nice.
Mm.
And Yvonne challenges our understandings so much.
Did you move them
Can
around
I
this morning?
also ask
No,
you
I
to
didn't.
talk about
This one's
their
No.
depression and how they cope with issues such as depression and childhood trauma?
Well, Evo did try, and if you see the film, and she was talking all the methods she was using to tackle the depression and severe depression, and eventually she gave all her money away and left nothing for herself. Then she felt much better. So she thinks money is a problem, and the depression does come back and goes. But she said that when the money is gone, then she felt the depression becomes much less. And for Chrissy, she's a traveler, and also she just gave up the stable life and big house and with a family, and she just traveled and living in almost nothing. So they think money, differently from the most of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I also find this very striking because when you talk about what we commonly seem to be individual problems such as depression and so on, they are actually bigger social issues. It's a bigger social issue such as inequality and injustice in society that causes depression and childhood trauma and so on. So now it comes to my last question, which is how do your films, those 3 films that you have shared and other films, speak to the theme of today's event, which is anti-discrimination in healthcare, and what is your approach to combat discrimination?
Yeah, I think the healthcare health professions, they have the power to dominate our lives, even our thinking. For example, homosexuality was a mental health. How to say, they define homosexuality as a mental illness before, and I think more and more people tell their stories. Then it helps the professionals to understand it's not a mental health issues. It is their knowledge need to be changed. So I think my approach is just collecting more stories, individual stories, and to create the knowledge from those lived experiences from the marginalized communities. I think that is the one way of tackling the discrimination, because if you speak, if you have voices, if your knowledge and if your experiences can be part of the knowledge, and that is the way to change the culture and the society. So yeah, so that's why I make films. I try to use human stories to challenge the norms and the knowledge created by so-called professionals.
Yeah, Absolutely. I love this kind of artist, this using the approach of films and art to challenge people's understanding and to change society. And we have 2 questions in the chat, so I'm not sure if you can see the questions, but I'll read out the questions in short. Or does the host, Janu, so are you going to read out the questions? Okay, I can't hear you. I think you're muted. Yes.
Sorry about that. But firstly, I just want to say thank you to both of you. That was very insightful. And as you can see, we have 2 questions. Let me just read that out for you guys. So question one is, Yivo and Chrissy explores the association between being queer, not only in terms of gender and sexuality, but also ways of living and well-being in the context of the UK. Do definitions of wellness and well-being differ in the UK from your national context of mainland China? I think this question is for Dr. He.
I think Xiaopei is in the backstage, and she may not be in the show now. Can we bring her back?
We're having some technical issues. Oh, okay. So I think Dr. He has lost connection.
Sorry, I tried to.
Okay, she's back on.
I tried to read the chat, and then I lost the connection. Sorry. Can you repeat your question?
Hi. No, that's all right. Should I repeat
your question? Yes, please.
The question for you? So Yivo and Chrissy explore the association between being queer, not only in terms of gender and sexuality, but also ways of living and well-being in the context of the UK. But do definitions of wellness and well-being differ in the UK from your national context, mainland China? And if so, how?
So well-being, I think depression in China is less recognized. Until recently, my film has been picked up by a group of by an NGO working on depression, and before that, I don't even know depression hasn't been a topic in the public. It's only recently people started talking about depression. So that's one difference, because in the UK there are lots of people talking about mental health issues, but not in China. And also, if people has money and they think if you have money, why you're so sad? You should be sad if you have money, like the film Yvonne said. But you know, the more money she has, the more depressed she got. But anyway, I think in China, depression is recognized now, and there are NGOs working on that, and I think there are people making films about it as well. And also, I showed the film in Shanghai, big city, and there was quite an interesting question I got from audience. She said, "Oh, those 2 people, they were rich, and then they gave up money." And then she said, "Do you know any poor people who don't want money?" So I think that's because, you know, China has I don't know if it's I can't generalize, but you know, it was really poor, and we were living in relatively poor conditions than, you know, generally speaking in the UK. And so I think that question is quite interesting because rich people, they can give up money. And how about poor people that never had money? And I remember I showed the film in Beijing in the big art gallery. And then they were all light-colored people, working in the office, those young people. And they said, why do you criticize capitalism? And why do you think money is bad? And so those people, they said, I'm tired of hearing capitalism in your speech, and what's wrong with the capitalism? So I think, people, I think, haven't seen the problems of the money, of lots of money. So I think, I think that the question is a very interesting question, the well-being and the way of seeing money, the way of seeing mental illness are quite different. But yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you for that. There's one other question. So this goes out to Dr. Bao as well. Has the subjects of your film, as in the different children you worked with and you changed the way that you thought about queerness and or well-being? And if so, has that changed?
Xiaopei, do you want to respond to it first?
No, it's a question for you, after you.
Those two films.
It's for both of y'all. Y'all can take turns.
Yeah, so I'll answer it first in that case. So those films changed my understanding so much. For example, so for I Love You Too, I'm really touched about all the vocabulary that the children use to describe their feelings, whether it's the feelings of happiness and feelings of pleasure and so on and so forth. There seems to be a very rich, actually, vocabulary in Chinese to describe people's feelings and emotions. A lot of them are very sensual and sexual, although we do not call them sexuality, but they describe experiences of sexuality. So that's one thing. The second thing is that actually those different experiences of eating, of feeling pleasure, of feeling happy, might as well be part of the experience of sexuality, except that modern society defines only some actions and some feelings as sexuality and other feelings as not. So it really enriches our understanding about sexuality and queerness. So that's my feeling, and Xiaopei.
I learned a lot from filming other people's lives and collecting stories. I think I learned also, from my colleagues and like Jose, he has a disability and he knows, how people feel, and once you have a disability, you're not seen as a full person. And I think sexuality is a core, and as a human being, and Jose hated those people are called children, because they are not seen as a full person. And they are denied all their rights, like education. In this care home, they provide no education. They don't know how to write, and they don't provide any lessons, but just give them food. And then, it's just so intolerable. And we stayed there, and we saw how people are treated. It's just so horrible. And also, they are not seen as gendered people as well. So, sexuality is denied, and the gender and their humanity. They can't choose anything they want. So I think for the fashion show, we had the clothes and for them to choose, and they were so excited because that's the first time they can choose things for themselves. So that's another thing. For Yvonne and Chrissy, I think I learned lots, and also from other films that I make. That is just so many things. From You know, my gender studies taught me any norms need to be broken. So I only look for those norms who look to break the norms. I think Ivan and Chrissy, they just break so many norms. So that's what I wanted to film and wanted to tell more stories about how people break their norms.
Thank you. So we have one last question. Society that criminalizes anything other than heterogender, and heterosexual relationships, how can one approach filmmaking in a way that is ethical, safe for subjects involved, but rebellious and subversive?
My line is breaking, so...
Sorry, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, but it's a breaking anyway, so I hear from Hongwei first. So.
Let me paraphrase the question. The question is that how can we as individuals, whether it's filmmakers or whatever, challenge those norms? I think that understanding what are the norms is one of the most important things. If we know that gender norms and sexual norms are there and they do not necessarily have to be so. And so that's one thing. The second aspect is that understanding that there is a wide spectrum of experiences that we don't know about. We might have only seen men and women, but there are trans people who may not actually fit into our fit into our imagination, and we need to understand that, and we need to respect that. So, Xiaopei.
Yeah, I think every film I make, I'm looking for something different from the mainstream ideas of what. For example, for the lesbian married gay man film, and I challenge the first lesbian married gay man. I looked at family, at marriage. Why do people have to marry? And I used the four lesbians' story to talk about the marriage institution and how bad this institution influences our lives. Then the sequel of lesbian married gay men, I look at the family, and I use the same four lesbian stories to see how they think family, what family is to them, and then how they create this queer family, and different from the general society think what would be the family is blood, is gene, and but they have a different family, and it is challenge the norm of a family and challenge the norm of a marriage. So every film I try to think about the old norm and create the new norm from their experiences and the life stories.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Xiaopei, for sharing your stories and your films, and thank the Ensemble Student Society for organizing today's event.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.